see it lumbering into the sky, retracting the gear, getting ready for its display.
Just under 1,200 of these were produced. As Dan said, the prototype flew in May 1945, but wasn't introduced into service until 1947. Over 37 different variants of this aircraft were produced, including some by Kawasaki, and it was called the Awashi, the Great Eagle. It was fitted with T-64 turboprops instead of those radial engines.
Just an amazing sight on the escarpment there. We're in such a lucky spot at Shellharbour Airport, and the weather is really playing the game today. It is just a magnificent view seeing that aircraft track along the ridgeline.
The aircraft flew in 1945, but the original letter of intent signed by the US Navy was actually signed in 1943. So the forward planning for this was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it was built too late for World War II to see service there, but it was designed before the Cold War, and it became a Cold War warrior. So in the 1950s, a lot of tension between the East and the West, the United States and Russia, and this aircraft was doing maritime patrol all over the world's oceans looking for those pesky Russian submarines.
The first unit actually to receive this has a whole lot of alphabet soup. VPML2, or Patrol Squadron Medium Land-Based 2, was the first to receive the P2V-7, as it was called.
Now, if you have a look on the rear of the aircraft, it's got quite a large protrusion. That's actually the magnetic anomaly detector, also known as a mad boom. So what they would do, they would fly all over the ocean. They'd have a bit of an idea where the submarines are, and submarines are made out of metal. So as they'd fly over the submarine, the mad detector would pick up on those Russian submarines. They would turn around and spot them and track them.
Of course, the early ones, they actually had, a la World War II, they had a nose turret, they had a top turret, and a rear turret to protect the aircraft. But obviously, with a change of requirements, a change of times, a change of opposing machinery, no need for fighter protection.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And just showing a sign of the time, so navigation back in the day was quite difficult. They didn't have Google Maps, there was no GPS, so they had to use whatever they could. So it actually had 3 navigators operating the aircraft, and I was a bit unsure of what they actually did yesterday, but then I was talking to Wendy, one of the observers on the aircraft, and she mentioned that there was a lot of fuel planning involved because they've got 2 different types of engines burning fuel at different rates. So any kind of things they need to do, it could be quite a complex fuel plan just to get anywhere.
And not only that, with most of these things having the experience of flying long range in a smaller Lockheed aircraft, the fuel system is very, very complex. It's incredible to think, as we said earlier on, 1948, one of these made the first carrier launch from the USS Coral Sea. If you have a look on the top of the fuselage behind the wing, you can see where that dorsal turret used to go. These aircraft were used in Korea, squadrons based in Japan, Korea itself, and also Okinawa on anti-submarine reconnaissance and road and rail interdiction, meaning spotting and hitting targets on roads. They were also used for artillery spotting because in Korea they still had the massive US battleships that were used to bombard targets on the coastline.
Yeah, it did a few more friendly flights as well. So one of the first flights of the early aircraft, the US Navy, or the US government was trying to show the Neptune off. It actually flew from RAF Base Pierce, which is in Perth, Western Australia, all the way to Columbus, Ohio in America. Just an incredible distance. It was 18,000 kilometers, just a cheeky 55 hours.
All the way from Perth to Columbus, Ohio, and that record was only beaten in 1986 by the special purpose-built Burt Rutan's Voyager. Beautiful topside pass for you.
Now, one of the interesting aerodynamic things about these aircraft, you can see it's got quite a large rudder, quite a large horizontal stabiliser, and they actually need that because the engines, it's not a centerline thrust aircraft, so the engines are out on the wing, so if they were to lose an engine on one side, the pilots need to put a lot of rudder in to keep the aircraft flying straight. You'll see that on aircraft like the Caribou in the front. That's also got a very large rudder for such a size aircraft, and that's all down to horizontal stability and control if you do lose an engine.
We mentioned that the Canberra earlier on was the first foreign customer was Australia, and it's the same with the Neptune. We were the first non-US operator of the Neptune, and they were delivered to numbers 10 and 11 Squadron eventually, basically replacing what was an extension of the World War II Lancaster, the Avro Lincoln. It's a 4-engine bomber that we built here in Australia as well, and we did a special adaptation of some for maritime reconnaissance and patrol, putting a big extension piece just ahead of the cockpit. So it was capable of that, carrying all of the radar.
Yeah, and 10 and 11 squadrons still operate today under 92 wing. They're currently flying the P8A Poseidon, which is the latest generation of maritime patrol aircraft. And you can see there's a P3 Orion parked on the other side of the airfield. That was also operated by 10 and 11 Squadron.
1957, Operation Westbound.
It sounds like I think that's the RAF's best trip ever. So the official reason was to provide an Australian presence at the Ghana independence ceremony and also to test out some long-range mobility. What they did, they took 3 Neptunes and crews and they just started flying west, and eventually they came back to Australia. It just sounds like an absolutely fun time.
Also operated in surveillance in conjunction with Operation Mosaic. Not a lot of people know that there were a lot of atom bomb tests conducted not only in Australia but also in the Montebello Islands off Australia. So we were involved in that. Operation Sabre Ferry, moving RAF Sabre fighters from Williamtown to Butterworth Air Base in Malone. We'll see a Sabre flying here later on, owned and flown by Jeff Trappett. And we also won the Fincastle Trophy, which is an international competition for anti-submarine and maritime surveillance. We won it 3 times with Neptunes, 1968, 1969 and 1970.